as Christine mentioned, I'm a gerontologist and a researcher. I also host a program called Wellness Wednesday. How many of you have been to one of my Wellness Wednesdays? Oh my gosh, this is great. So these are free online programs on healthy aging, and they're recorded in case you can't attend in real time. And we have some handouts coming for today's presentation and also for Wellness Wednesday, so you'll know how to join us. I went back to school, and when I started Zing, I went back to school in my 60s. I have a certificate in nutrition science from Stanford. I have a Master of Science in Gerontology from USC. And guess what? I have a doctorate in public health, or I'm getting one at a doctorate in public health at Indiana U. I will be 75 when I finish, but I'll be 75 anyway, right? Now, some of you have heard me speak before. Know that I also have a 5-year-old little girl. Would you like to see her? I brought a picture. Here she is. That's Bella. She said, Mom, I'm having a bad hair day in that picture. But I said nobody would care. All right, so here's what we are going to talk about today. I am very used to moving around, and our videographer said to stand here. We're going to talk about protein basics, the important function of protein for health. We will talk about how much is needed and when, and we're going to talk about sources, animal protein versus plant-based. And then finally, we will be talking about protein and exercise, how they work together to ensure our health. Now, my hope is that you get one idea. Some of this might seem familiar, some of it you might know, but I'm hoping that you have one practical takeaway from today. So here are some things about protein basics. Protein is a macronutrient, and you've probably heard this before. We have carbohydrates, that's another macronutrient for energy. We have fats for energy and cell function, and proteins provide instructions to our cells so to help ensure that the body can function. Now, proteins as instructions do lots and lots of things. They help facilitate chemical reactions. They provide antibodies that support the immune function. They help support muscle contraction and movement. They even regulate our DNA and RNA. They provide support to the whole body. They provide hormones that coordinate body function, and they move molecules around the body. So proteins do lots and lots of things. We're mostly going to focus on how they support muscle contraction and movement, but know that eating protein is essential for building proteins within the body. So why is protein so important as we age? So take a look at this graphic. What I'm showing you here is muscle mass. We have healthy muscle mass, and this is like a young 25-year-old. And you can pretty much see from this diagram, there's a lot of muscle mass and not too much fat. But notice how that changes as we get older. So what happens is that muscle mass tends to decline and the fat around that muscle increases. And I want to let you know that some of this is just a normal part of aging. And there are reasons for this. There are changes in the muscle fibers themselves. There's less activity, and also our eating habits may change. So all of this contributes to the loss of muscle. Now, when this muscle loss is severe, it's called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is severe muscle wasting. Is that better? Thank you. It's severe muscle wasting. It means that the muscle mass is 2 standard deviations below what a normal 25 or 30-year-old would have. There is also a corresponding loss of gait and strength. You can't move as fast. You're simply not as strong. And sarcopenia affects about 5 to 13% of adults over 70, and then that increases over 80, it might be as much as 50%. So what's interesting is that we're not seeing sarcopenia just in frail people. There is an increase in sarcopenic obesity. So people who are significantly overweight can also have sarcopenia. So there are two ways to maintain muscle mass as we get older: adequate protein intake and exercise. Now, this is the key part of my presentation, if you remember nothing else, is that they go together. Just eating enough protein or eating extra protein does not build muscle. Eating adequate protein along with exercise does the trick. And I'm going to talk about how much exercise at the end. Now, you can get protein from two sources, animals and plants. So let's talk about protein in grams, and I'm going to give you some simple guidelines later on in this presentation. But take a look at this. Does anything surprise you? Like, you would probably expect salmon to have protein. You might expect the egg to have protein. Are you surprised by that whole wheat bun? Oh, the whole wheat bun has, wow, almost as many grams of protein as the egg. That cup of broccoli has about 2.5 grams of protein. Even oats from oatmeal, 5 grams. Look at that, skim milk and oatmeal, 14 grams. And so my point is that a lot of people think that protein is from animals, but plants have protein too. Now, protein building blocks. Proteins, it's like we eat protein and then it makes these proteins in our body. And so the building blocks of proteins are amino acids. There are 20 amino acids. Do not ask me to recite them. I knew them at one point for one exam in my life, but there's 20 of them. I have a few favorites, okay. And then what happens in our body, these amino acids form in different chains called peptides. And then peptides turn into proteins in our body. And those proteins provide instructions to the cells, for example. So amino acids are found in both plant-based and animal-based protein. All animal-based and plant-based proteins have all 20 amino acids. There's 19 essential ones. Those are the ones we must eat because our bodies can't manufacture them. And then there's 11 non-essential amino acids that the body can manufacture as long as it gets the other 9. Now, the way amino acids are distributed in plants is a little bit different than animals, and you don't care about that now, but you'll care about it by the end of today. But they all, plants and animal sources of protein, all have 20 amino acids. Now, how much protein is enough? Well, this is a big topic of debate. There is something called the acceptable macronutrient distribution range, and it is set by the Institute of Medicine of the National Academies. And what it does is it shows about how much percentage of calories we should get from those macronutrients. So carbs is about 45 to 65%. Fat is 20 to 35%. Protein is 10 to 35%, a pretty big range. Anyone want to take a guess on why these ranges are so big? Why isn't it more specific? It's so broad. Any guesses?
Well,
yes?
I think it's because the category is broad.
Yeah, it's because the category is broad, and this research has been done with populations in 7 countries. And so if you think of people in Alaska, okay, for example, who have lots and lots of access to salmon, their diet is going to be really high in a certain kind of fat, omega-3 fats, because they have access to salmon. In Japan, they may have more access to rice. So there are different acceptable patterns, really depending on what your food sources are. Now, the biggest area of controversy is protein. So yes, that's what I am talking about today. And I'm going to try to explain some of that controversy. So there is something called the RDA for protein, the recommended dietary allowance. The RDA is for calcium, it's for magnesium. The RDAs are set by the National Academy's Food and Nutrition Board as part of the Dietary Reference Intake System. And I share that with you because no matter what our current Secretary of Health and Human Services puts on a tweet, he does not set the RDAs, okay? Okay, commercial over. So what happens is this nutrition board looks at, for the US population, they look at our needs on a population basis. And it's a bell curve, right? That makes sense. At the top of that curve is the estimated average requirement. That means how much protein most people need. The RDAs, the recommended dietary allowance, is set 2 standard deviations higher. It is set way over here, and it's set to meet the needs of 97.5% of the population. So I'm simply saying that because when we look at the RDAs, they're already set pretty high. Now, how much protein is enough? Well, it depends on who you ask. So I'm going to start with my friend, colleague, mentor, Dr. Christopher Gardner from Stanford. How many of you know Dr. Gardner? So he is great. We go back and forth on this. He's like, eat the RDA. That's what he says is adequate. And he points out the fact that here in the US, we eat about twice as much protein as any population in the world. Then there are other researchers, highly respected. Stuart Phillips, Dr. Phillips is out of McMaster University in Canada. Don Chapman is out of the University of Illinois at Champaign. And they say for older adults, you need to eat twice the RDA. Oh my gosh, okay, that's a lot. And then there's a seminal paper that I go back to over and over again in 2015 for older adults, Nosen and Connell, and they say, you know, it doesn't really have to be double, but it needs to be a little bit more than the RDA. And I will tell you that after reading so many of these papers, I think this is where I'm landing, a little bit more than the RDA. And I say that for a reason. What I find is that if we tell older adults you need twice the amount of protein, we become protein obsessed. And we're drinking protein coffee, and we're having protein Cheerios, and you know, it's like we've become obsessed with it. And honestly, I just don't see the evidence for that recommendation. But no, it's an area of controversy. Okay, so why do older adults need more than the RDA? In my professional opinion, it has to do with this picture. It has to do with this muscle protein synthesis. So remember, your body is taking amino acids, it's mixing them up, it's putting them into peptides, and then it's putting them into these protein chains. And as we get older, this process right here, it becomes less efficient. Our bodies just aren't as good at it. And so it takes more protein, or so we believe, in order to help combat that less effective muscle protein synthesis. But I'm going to tell you that this is a researched opinion, and we haven't proven this, but it is the belief based on research. Okay, so, and again, you have a handout. You don't need to remember this, but I just want to give you kind of some guidelines. So most adults, if you're under 65, okay, you need 0.36 grams of protein times your weight. Normally we do this in kilograms. Does anyone know how much they weigh in kilograms? That's what I thought. That's why we're doing it in pounds. Okay, so a 100-pound person would need 36 grams of protein a day. That's not a whole lot. You know, if you're 200 pounds, you might need 72. My rule of thumb, if you're over 65, it's about 2/3 of your body weight. So I'm not doubling that. I'm using a number 0.66. So in other words, a 100-pound person would need 66 grams of protein a day. And most of us eat enough. So men and women, this is the NHANES study. You've probably heard of this national survey on eating habits. This was done between 2017 and 2020. People self-reported, women, that they were eating 70 grams of protein a day, and men said 97. I will tell you that these studies are notoriously short on what people report. They usually eat at least a third more than they report. I will tell you that I don't even weigh 100 pounds, and I eat about 80 grams of protein a day without trying, okay? So we don't have to be obsessed with it, but I think it's a good guideline for people to eat a little more than the RDA. And again, this is in your handout, so you can do the math or you can just look at the chart. Okay, so how can I get more? Assuming that you think, well, I might not be eating enough, how can I get more? Okay, so I'm going to give you some sample menus, and they're also in the handout. So this is mostly animal-based. I mean, it's really hard to get all your protein just from animals. But, I started with an egg and 2 egg whites. I mean, that's something, if you prepare food for yourself, you can always add extra egg white to something, because that's the part of the egg that has the protein. 13 grams. And then some non-fat yogurt, 17. Maybe some salmon, 25. 5 ounces of chicken, 44. And then I just threw in one whole piece of whole wheat toast, because it has 4 grams of protein. The next time, if you go to the supermarket and you buy bread, look at bread. Bread has 4 or 5 grams of protein in every slice. So that gets you to 103 grams. I would say most people here don't need 103 grams, but that gets you there. But look, I can do it all on plant-based protein as well. So here I did oatmeal and soy milk. Soy milk is a wonderful source of protein, almost exactly the same number of grams as regular dairy milk. I did some tofu, I did black beans, I did some lentil soup. Here I did do some protein powder and some soy milk. I'm not a huge fan of protein powder. I think you should try to get this from your regular food, but once in a while that can help. And then look, wild rice. Who knew a cup of wild rice has 7 grams? So here I got pretty close, 100 grams. Now, the other way to get more protein is high protein snacks. And I know a lot of people eat their meals here, which is so wonderful, but you can always augment. Here I did a few: hard-boiled egg, hummus, cottage cheese, edamame, nuts, yogurt, roasted chickpeas, chia pudding. What did I forget? What else do you like that you might want for a snack that would have protein? Just shout it out.
Nuts.
Nuts. Yeah, do I have nuts? Oh yeah, but I like nuts. Nuts are great. And you know what? Who said nuts? Speaking of nuts. Yeah, they're a great source of magnesium. And most older adults don't get enough magnesium. So just having a 1/4 cup of nuts a day, even with a little bit of dark chocolate in it, like dark chocolate chips, all the magnesium you need. I digress, but I do love my nuts. Anything else? What else did we might have forgotten? Peanut butter? Yeah, peanut butter might be good. Cheese, to a small extent. Cheese also has a lot of saturated fat, so I try not to eat like a lot of cheese as a snack food, but cottage cheese is absolutely wonderful. So you can add more snacks. Yes, Jackie, and say it really loud. I thought we were going to have a microphone back there for you, but you just talk loud.
Yeah, I will. So, what do you think about these? I buy something at Costco called Chomps.
Chops?
Chomps, C-H-O-M-P, like your chomp.
Oh, Chomps.
And it's like a pepperoni stick. It's a stick. It's a prepared, processed something.
Yeah.
But it's really high. It has like 10 grams of protein in a stick, very low fat, very low sodium. It is processed. So what's your feeling about that kind of
Yeah, so Jackie asked, I'm just going to repeat it. She asked about Chomps, and it's a processed food. Okay. And you said something, you said it's low in sodium, because as soon as I heard that, I thought it might be high in sodium, which again, older adults need to avoid. I think if you really like that, and that's something you enjoy, eat it. Again, we are trying to reduce the amount of processed foods in our diet, but we can't avoid it completely. So if it's something that you really enjoy, yes. I did a webinar yesterday, and I confessed like loving macaroni and cheese. I don't eat it all the time, but I do love it. All right. So, which is better? The big debate, animal versus plant. Well, I guess if you ask the animals, they would say plant, right? But let's just look at this, because I think this is an important distinction. So remember this slide. I said it was going to become important later. Animal-based proteins and plants all have 20 amino acids, okay? 9 essential, 11 non-essential. What I said before was amino acids are distributed less evenly in plants. And here's a couple notable ones. So grains are low in an amino acid called lysine. Grains would include your wild rice, your farro, your barley, your brown rice. So they are kind of low in lysine. And beans, black beans, white beans, kidney beans, garbanzo beans, they're a little bit low in methionine. Now, why do we care? Well, we care because they are called limiting amino acids. And what happens is if your body is trying to produce a protein, like this is the goal, it's trying to create this, and then it's missing something. It's like missing some lysine or it's missing some methionine. It can't actually progress. It can't go from here to here if you have that limiting amino acid. And my professor, the wonderful Dr. Gardner, explained it to me like a game of Scrabble. He said, okay, like lysine, like let's say you're gonna make the word love in Scrabble, but you don't have an L. What are you gonna do? Oh yeah, I can't make that. He said, okay, what if you're gonna make the word mother for methionine, but you don't have an M? Oh, I'm gonna have to make something else. And so this is a little bit of the challenge with if you eat all plant-based protein, the biggest thing that you need to do is eat variety. In other words, don't say, oh my gosh, I'm only gonna eat beans and I'm gonna get all the protein I need, because you're gonna be missing some amino acids and those can limit protein production. That's the biggest thing, is eat variety. And quite honestly, that would be one of my top nutrition tips for all of us anyway, because not only of the protein, the amino acids, but the vitamins and minerals. So now I get asked this question, how is timing important for protein? And I would say yes. So your body can only use about 30 grams of protein at each meal, which means that you're going to do best if you distribute that protein throughout the day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, sadly, Americans have a very different dietary pattern. Maybe not here, but breakfast is often really light, toast and jelly, toast and butter. Lunch is kind of questionable, okay? Peanut butter and jelly and a tortilla. But then the protein is saved for the evening. And you're not really getting enough protein during the day, and you're getting a lot that you can't necessarily use at night. This one is a little better, but I'd still say that it could be improved. So just fruit for breakfast, just a salad but no protein for lunch, and then salmon at night. You see the thing here, you really want to distribute it during the day. Now, a lot of people say, well, I can't eat that much at breakfast. Who's not a big breakfast eater? Anyone? A few of you. Oh, who doesn't like to eat a big breakfast? Yeah, and that's fair. Oh, wait, this was my other one. This is dinner. No, not a good idea. Okay, so here's an idea for breakfast, and it's actually what I do for breakfast, because I am pretty hungry in the morning, but I can't just like sit and eat it all at once. So I start at 7 a.m. I have a tortilla, a low-carb tortilla, a couple teaspoons of peanut butter. I love it. Bella has her breakfast, Mommy has hers, okay? Then about 8 a.m., I'm hungry again. And I have oatmeal, and I have skim milk, blueberries, and I throw in some ground flax seeds because they're also a good source of protein. And then 10 a.m. I might have a hard-boiled egg, or I might have hummus. So it's not that you have to eat this all in one sitting, but I do encourage people to try to regulate that protein intake throughout the day. There are some benefits for that. Yes?
I'm just curious, do you differentiate between like almond butter and peanut butter? Is it one better than the other?
The question is, do you differentiate between almond butter and peanut butter? I don't. I like the taste of peanut butter better. Some people are allergic, so that would be a big...
Okay, otherwise...
Yeah. No, I think it's fine.
Same.
I think it's fine. And I love it. Now, I don't love it quite as much as that macaroni and cheese, but I love it. And so here, what you're seeing with that breakfast is about 27 grams of protein, but I didn't eat it all at once. So that's the idea. You just want to try to regulate protein intake and not just save it for lunch or just save it for dinner. And here's why. So it will increase levels of fullness and decrease cravings. I give a speech called Our Love of Sugar and What to Do About It. And one of my tips is to eat more protein throughout the day because it helps satisfy us and reduce cravings. Also, it stabilizes blood glucose levels, which also help with cravings, in particular those for sweets. And it will help improve muscle protein synthesis, which remember does not happen quite as effectively in older adults. So anything we can do to help that along is good. Now, what do you think? Can you eat too much protein? Who thinks yes? Yeah. Anybody think no? All right, you want to see what my slide says? Yes and no. How about that? So, yes, if you eat too many calories. And this is where I think some of these diets are a little bit nuts. Like, eat all the protein you want, or eat all the bacon you want. I mean, it's just, it's mind-boggling. If you eat more calories than you burn, over time you will gain weight. And it doesn't matter if it's protein, you know? So yes, if you eat too many calories. No, probably not related to kidney disease. So this was in the news, I think, boy, I want to think maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, this was a big news item, like, oh my God, people are eating too much protein and it's damaging their kidneys. Well, I wanted to find out for sure. So there was a meta-analysis of 40 studies. So a lot of research. No difference in kidney function in healthy adults if you consume a high protein diet versus a low protein diet, unless you have kidney disease. And if you have kidney disease, then it could be a problem. So that could be a challenge. But again, I'm trying to make you protein aware, not protein obsessed.
Well, what percent of people do you think, of adults, would you say are actually healthy?
Oh, that's a big question.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that. Maybe we'll come back to that at the end. What percentage of adults are actually healthy? Not sure. We might come back to that. Okay, now here's one. Does eating protein build muscle?
Not by itself.
It can.
Not by itself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, not by itself. Remember this slide. I said I'd come back to this. It's adequate protein intake and exercise. These two go hand in hand. So just eating protein doesn't build muscle. Again, there is so much baloney, pun intended, on social media about this, and it just doesn't work that way. And yes.
Yeah, quick question about that. Does it matter? Is there an association of building muscle mass between when you eat protein and when you exercise? I mean, do they go together? Do you do one before the other? Does it matter?
Let's take Jackie's question. I'm going to repeat that. Well, does it matter when you exercise and when you eat the protein? There are dozens and dozens of studies about this, Jackie. This is really a question for somebody who would be a kinesiologist and more into sports medicine. So I would say if you are an athlete and you might be going out for the Olympics, it might make a difference. Here, probably not. It just doesn't. I think we're obsessed about too many other things. I would just rather see you eat your protein throughout the day. And then modify your meal before or after an exercise depending on what you're hungry for or how you feel. I think that's just really practical. But if you decide to try out for the Olympics, I think we're going to have them in a few years, you let me know. That's a good question. This is one of the largest studies about protein and exercise. This is the Optimum study. It was a clinical trial done in 2017. Here's what the principal investigator said. You can't simply increase your muscle mass by eating more protein. So I think this paper is fascinating. Remember I said that there was a thought leader, a researcher, who says we should double the amount of protein that we eat. That's Stuart Phillips out of McMaster University. And this is his study, okay? And he and his team did a systematic review of 74 randomized clinical trials. That's huge. They looked at two populations, under 65 and over 65. They found that additional protein, I'm not saying double the protein, I'm saying additional protein beyond the RDA resulted in some gains, small gains in lean body mass and lower body strength in participants age 65 and older, but only in combination with resistance exercise. So his own study didn't say eat more protein to build muscle. It said it works a little bit, not a whole lot, but it works a little bit in combination with resistance exercise. Yes?
And it lowered body strength?
Oh, and no, I'm sorry. And small gains in lean body mass and lower body strength. Lower body, yeah.
Okay.
No, I was reading, I'm like, oh, do I have a typo? No, thank you. Yes, and lower body strength. Yeah. Okay, so add strength training. Okay, you might not want to raise your hand. How many of you do some kind of strength training? This is amazing. This is amazing. So you're asking me about healthy people. This is an amazing thing to see. So it could be as simple as body weight. Those are wall push-ups. Resistance bands, light weights, and you have access to so many good things here. And I will say, when I came in, I was looking at the elevator and the schedule. I see that Lily is still teaching yoga. Yoga is also a form of strength training. If you are doing standing poses, you are simultaneously working on strength and balance. So I think all of these are good, but yoga is a wonderful addition. Okay, so here are my top takeaways, and then I'll be opening this up for question. Become protein aware, not obsessed, not every, protein water, protein coffee drink, protein gummy bears. Oh my God, like what is in those, okay? Protein aware. 2 is you might add a protein snack throughout the day. And that might be something that you purchase and make on your own. Spread your protein out during the day and try a strength training class. Ideally, you should be doing about 20 minutes of strength training 2 or 3 times a week. And that's the guidance of the American Heart Association. All right, so that is my presentation. I will open it up for questions, and if you have one, speak in a loudspeaker voice and I will repeat it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.